Episodes of the Green Corn Rebellion Show are sponsored by Oklahoma Progress Now. Oklahoma Progress Now is a 501c4 organization focused on building progressive power in Oklahoma. Their primary efforts are on developing progressive content for a 21st century audience, coalition, and capacity building across progressive organizations and causes, and working to see elected leaders who are more responsive to their constituents and the needs of the many. Areas of focus include progressive messaging and communications, coalition building and resource sharing, and focused progressive policy goals. You can check out their Twitch live streams, and they go live on Facebook on at noon, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Please support this organization. It's a really great organization. It's just getting started here in Oklahoma. Thank you. Now enjoy the rest of the video. Hello, this is the Green Corn Rebellion Show, and today I am here with Marty Peercy, who is the man behind the tweets of OKC-Span and live tweets the happenings in the Oklahoma City Council and Oklahoma County Commissioner Board meetings. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. I should say the weather outside is nice enough for those of us who live inside. The weather is nice enough to go out and take a little walk. We went up, took the dog out for a walk a little bit earlier and got out some, and it's been nice to just get some fresh air outside of the apartment because we've been mostly locked down for the last 9 months,
Yeah, that's good. The snow was kind of a little annoying earlier this week. I was like,
yeah,
yeesh, like I can't even go out anyway, but now it's like there's snow.
right. It made it just worse. Like I might only leave the apartment to walk my dog during a day, but that was even worse this week because there was snow and sleet happening, and my dog, he doesn't want to go out any more than I do, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, the weather kept me even more kind of centralized this week than usual.
Yeah. All right. So, first question I have here is, where are you from and where did you grow up at?
Oh, I was born in Oklahoma. I was born in Holdenville. I went to grade school in Prague,
Okay.
and I went to high school in Tecumseh, or as people around there might say, Tecumseh. But yeah, I went through high school in Oklahoma and went to college for a little bit at Oklahoma Baptist University, which then I moved to Chicago and I attended DePaul University in Chicago. And I always tell people I probably got more of my education college-wise, got more of my education at DePaul, but I have like lifelong friends that I made because of OBU, whether at school or just because, I mean, like I met my wife in Shawnee, Shawnee, Oklahoma, where OBU, Oklahoma Baptist University is, your hometown as well. Like, because I ran a coffee shop downtown in Shawnee, and she was in college at the time, and she would come there and hang out, and that's how we met. And I've got a lot of relationships, a lot of lifelong relationships because of OBU, even though I don't endorse the school. I wouldn't send anybody there. I'd discourage anybody I talk to from going there. But I do have legitimate lifelong relationships that I made by being either at OBU as a student or just in the community. Running a coffee shop in a college town means that you're going to interact with the college students. So, but I spent my formative years in Chicago. I went to DePaul. I worked at DePaul University for a while. I was a professional actor. in Chicago, and really cut my teeth on kind of. I mean, I was in Chicago when 9/11 happened. I know that's hard for you to imagine. I was a grown ass man at the point that happened, and that's hard for a youngster like you to really probably grasp. But I lived in a huge city when 9/11 happened, and that really kind of shaped a lot of my thinking and a lot of my response to politics. So yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you to tell me a little bit more about your time in the Shawnee, Tecumseh area.
Yeah, well, so there's like my childhood, like teen years, and then there's my early 20s, and then there's my like come back from Chicago 10 years later and be there for a few years. So Shawnee has always been Shawnee and Tecumseh have always been kind of home base for me. My parents bought their home in Tecumseh in, I'm going to say 1993, and they're still in the same house, and they'll die in that house. That's where they live. My dad is a minister. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
I didn't know.
he's a Baptist, a missionary Baptist preacher. And here comes Jo Beth, by the way. I think she's even on the phone, so that should be a good interruption. Don't forget to wave hi on your way by. No, she's just going on by, ignoring us. Classic. But yeah, so I went to high school in Tecumseh, which I found really, I started out grade school. I went to school in the tiny town of Prague, Oklahoma. So I was one of like maybe 45 kids in my class. So when I got to Tecumseh, I thought Tecumseh was big to me because we had 150 in our class, and I thought this is a big school, like, and just self-preservation made me really charismatic. So, I was less likely to get beaten up because I was like funny and fun, to be around. But, I went to school for a little bit at OBU. I studied acting. I studied theater there. And then I moved to Chicago to act. I mean, that's why I moved there. And while I was there, I acted, but I got really involved in politics, especially leftist politics. Chicago's really a hotbed for political action. It's always been a pretty radical city. And so I learned a lot of I'd say I cut my teeth like marching against the first Gulf, or not the first Gulf War, the second Gulf War, but at the beginning of it, right after 9/11, I was working at DePaul, and I was working nights, and I walked off the job to join the march against the beginning of the war with Iraq following 9/11. And just experienced a lot in Chicago over those 10 years of my life. So I moved back here because I just wanted a fresh start. And then I ended up like getting married and then getting divorced and moving back to Chicago, and then moving back because I had a death in the family and I felt really isolated from that. And so I moved back to Oklahoma, and I've been here since, and I've really started a much better new life since then. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. It's always interesting getting to chat with people who grew up here before I was born and stuff
Right.
like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. Shawnee has a lot more to offer than somebody would think. There used to be a priest who was a radical leftist in Shawnee.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the priest. He wasn't a Catholic priest. He was an Episcopal priest. But Father Clark was his name, And Father Clark was Democratic. So he's probably the first Democratic socialist that I ever met in my life. Like I was probably a teenager when I met him.
Oh, wow.
And that's, there was a chapter of Democratic Socialists. This was before DSA was such a big thing. This was decades ago. But there was a chapter that met at the Emmanuel Episcopal Church in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I
That was
didn't
back in the
know
day.
that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this is back in the day. Yeah.
Whatever happened to it?
Oh, some of the members of that are still pretty engaged in life in Shawnee. Some of them I wouldn't be able to tell you. I wouldn't know what's happened to them. It's been decades since I engaged with them. But there's still quite a few, especially around that church, like that specific Episcopal church. There's still some pretty left-leaning Christians there, which I think is something that's left out of the conversation a lot. Like that there are, in fact, like if you want to talk static about evangelical Christianity, get in line behind me. Like that's one of my favorite things to talk about is how badly the church has kind of messed up social justice in America. But there are churches all over the country filled with earnest, well-meaning leftists who just happen to have a difference of philosophical belief than I do. But you can find churches like that in small towns like Shawnee. You can find plenty of them in large cities like Chicago. But while I'm not a believer, I really do appreciate and embrace fellow leftists who are Christians, because I recognize them doing things to me the right way. It's not exactly doctrinaire with evangelical Christianity in America today, but I see them doing it in spite of that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, that's an interesting thing I've learned. Oh, wow.
Well, good.
What made you want to start doing OKC-Span?
Well, it's funny. I lost my job a couple of years ago. I worked for the Curbside Chronicle, which for followers and viewers and listeners who might not know what that is a street paper in Oklahoma City. This is a model that started about 30 years ago in various places. Well, it's been longer than that. It's been over 100 years in America, but more recently, in the last 30 years, in different communities around the world, people have started newspapers, or in our case, a magazine here in Oklahoma City, where people experiencing homelessness can join this organization and sell these newspapers or magazines as a way of making some income with a really low barrier of entry. Like you don't have to fill out an application, you don't do a background check, you don't have to have an address, it's a way to make some income, but more importantly, at Curbside, it was a way to get people hooked into services. So we did a lot of housing out of that program. But that program is based at the Homeless Alliance in Oklahoma City. And I worked there for a couple of years, and I lost my job over a disagreement about funding sources. We just to be open about it, Curbside took a donation from somebody in the community who I think is a bad actor, who actually contributes to gentrification and thus to homelessness. And I said I wouldn't participate in the program that they sponsored if they were the sponsor. And so I got fired over that. So that's how I lost my job. That happened at a time when our city was really, like Oklahoma City was really, really starting to engage in the possibility of actual reform for our criminal justice system locally. Um, the jail trust hadn't been established, but it was about to be. And so I just started, I was going to go to these meetings anyway. Plus, I'm always on Twitter. And so I just started tweeting at these meetings that I was attending. And these were all under my own regular personal Twitter. And a friend of mine, fellow leftist in Oklahoma City Twitter culture, Judy Ganul, you can find her on Twitter. She's the people's librarian, I like to call her, but she suggested I set up a different account and set up a Patreon and start doing it for real. And I followed her advice, and here I am, like 3,500 followers later, which is not a ton of followers, but for what I do, specifically very inside baseball kind of tweeting. Like I am at city council live tweeting what's happening. I'm at county commissioners or county budget board or the jail trust or planning commission or whatever. These things can be pretty boring if you're outside of Oklahoma City, but it's just really, unlike a lot of small towns with cities, all the city business happens during the day. And so your average citizen who has to go to work or your average resident who has to go to work during the day, it's just not as likely for them to be able to participate in the system. And so I'm like just trying to share all of, like, here's what's literally happening in real time. And people have really responded to that, which I'm pretty happy about, you know, of course. You know, I have people who I don't know mention it to me a lot, like refer to it specifically as a service, which is comforting to hear, you know. I do get paid for it. I have a Patreon, and that's my main source of income is tweeting on OKC-Span, which is, by the way, if anybody was wondering, at OKC_Span. That's how to find it on Twitter.
Yeah, I remember whenever you started it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I don't follow every tweet thread or everything. But, you know, like, but you're putting out, like, information that probably otherwise wouldn't have been talked about or anyone wouldn't have known. And, you know, like, that's super valuable, especially at the local level like that.
Yeah, I think so. I just... light is a disinfectant, right? Like, and I'll say, like, I'm not going to take credit for it, but like how much attention Oklahoma County has gotten in the last 6 months, I feel like I helped with exposing some of that corruption. And that's just by being at the right place at the right time. So I'm just really lucky that I started doing this, is all.
Yeah, like some things I wouldn't even know about if it wasn't for either you tweeting about it or Carrie Bloomer. She posts a lot of stuff about what's going on. And otherwise I would not know anything that's going on in Oklahoma County or Oklahoma City. I mean, I don't actively try to find out either, but like otherwise, like I wouldn't know if I wasn't following people who I trusted to give me that information.
That's fair enough. I mean, especially not living in the county, like, why would it be on your like radar, you know?
So tell me about the whole controversy with the CARES Act money in the county.
Okay. I'll try to make this as brief and unboring as possible. So the county of Oklahoma County, when the federal government passed the CARES Act, they distributed money to states, to cities that were over 500,000 people population, and to counties. And I don't know how they split it up by counties, but Oklahoma City got a lot more CARES Act money than the county of Oklahoma County got. But the county got about 57 million, I think. It's been a while, right? It's been about 6 months. But one county commissioner who is now in his second term, his name is Kevin Calvey, he decided that he thought the best use for $34 million of that CARES money was to go to the jail, the county jail. Now, our county jail is a humanitarian crisis. So I'm not arguing that the jail doesn't need money to get corrected. Now, I'm an abolitionist, so correcting the jail to me means like getting rid of cash bail, getting rid of harsh sentencing for low-level crimes, mental health treatment, drug and alcohol use disorder treatment, and just generally getting mental health care for people who use violence or commit any other crime is going to be way more effective. So take all of this with a grain of salt. If we're not going to get that, which we're clearly not going to get it right away, we need a better, more humane jail if we're going to be using a jail in our county. So I'm not entirely against the idea of using money for jail, but this was an effort to, I'd say on the surface, it looks like it was an effort to launder money. Like we've got this CARES Act money from the government. It has to be spent, A, by the end of December, which is rapidly approaching, and B, on COVID-related expenses. So it sounds like Commissioner Calvi got direction from somebody in Senator Lankford's office connected with the Treasury. And basically, it sounds like they got one guideline one time, and he just seized on that and decided to do everything based on that, in spite of the fact that Treasury keeps updating guidelines, right? The whole time has been the last new guidelines, I think, were 2 weeks ago. And here we are, like a couple of weeks from the end of the deadline, right? But so Calvi wanted to transfer $34 million of our county's CARES Act money to the jail trust that now is in charge of the jail, for them to use it to COVID-proof the jail. But this included, according to some emails uncovered by Oklahoma Progress Now, like basically trying to launder that money by using it to replace budget money for personnel costs, which is kind of insane. Like, so we've had protesters and activists have been coming to county meetings for the last 6 months, like fighting about this. And so the jail trust got the money allocated for the jail trust. They came up with a budget that only included $15 million, and they voted to give the rest of that money back. I think it's important to point out that none of that money had ever been transferred. All that money was still sitting in county coffers, unencumbered, but like earmarked, but not encumbered. So that money has to be encumbered then by the Board of County Commissioners, and then can be distributed. But for months, all of that $34 million was sitting in the county bank account without being used, without being distributed to even the jail trust where it's supposed to go. Like, it's all been super fishy, like high-level skullduggery on the part of definitely Commissioner Calvi, and with some help, I would say, by Commissioner Brian Mon of District 2. District 1 County Commissioners, Carrie Bloomer, she's been against this from the beginning, but she's only one of 3. And that's the thing about county commissioners, and this is nationwide, is there are 3 in the county. So that's like having, if the mayor of the biggest city had if there were 3 mayors and they make the decision, you know, if Chicago had a triumvirate panel of mayors instead of having the city board, it would be the same kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
this is just three people deciding what happens with everything that happens. It comes, every bit of money that comes into the county, it's three people. So having two people disagree with one is an immediate majority, you know. But I don't know. That's kind of boring sounding, but it's been pretty dirty
Yeah.
pool being played at the county level. So hopefully that wasn't too in the weeds for your audience, but because that's
No, I
kind of boring
mean,
sounding.
no, that educated me a little bit more on the issue. I knew there was something about they wanted to give this enormous amount of money to the jail,
Mm-hmm.
but I did know that it was possibly some sort of like laundering scheme.
Well, and those are
And
my words. That's not
yeah,
official, but I wouldn't be surprised at all
yeah,
for a grand jury to one day knock on Calvi's door and just say that, like, you clearly misappropriated this money. I
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised at all, especially living in a state where, you know, I've seen dozens of county commissioners go to jail, you
yeah,
know, in my life. So
yeah. Like I remember, what is it? Like I think I saw some article from like 1980 something that said like Oklahoma has like some of the most corrupt county commissioners in the country or
yeah,
something. Like this
we
isn't like,
certainly
yeah,
have
like,
in the past, at least.
yeah, it's nothing new. And I'm like,
Right.
it kind of makes it easy for stuff like that to happen. Like I think the general rule is like at the local level, it's more easier to get away with corruption because either A, no one's paying attention to those local things, or
Yeah.
B, there's only like a couple of people involved anyway, so it's kind of just like, you know, when less people are involved, it kind of makes it easier for bad things to happen. So
I think
yeah,
that's true. I think that people get really distracted by I think national politics is super important. I think international politics is super important. I don't want to let that get lost in this, but where you as an individual have the most say in your life of politics is at a city level. I mean, your school board, your city council, your mayor, definitely in a weak mayor city like Shawnee is, and like Oklahoma City is, like your city managers hiring,
mm-hmm.
like like citizens need to really pay attention, residents need to pay attention to that, and really make noise about who's going to be running their city, because you can make a difference. Like a lot of our city elections, you know, like people win by 500 votes. Like it's just
Yeah,
not, and you know, Oklahoma City has nearly 1 million people. Like for 500 votes to make a difference in who's the mayor, who's the city councilor for some ward or whatever. Like
yeah.
that's a big deal, and I really wish if I had one thing that I could do to, like, that I could just snap my fingers and change, it would be to make people engaged in their local politics. Like people don't subscribe to voting enough. And I definitely agree on a national level, your vote doesn't mean much, especially in a state like Oklahoma under the Electoral College,
Yeah,
where, you know, 77 counties are going to go Republican somehow. Um, but man, the city of Tulsa and the city of Oklahoma City, the city of Lawton, like now the city of Shawnee has some
yeah,
progressive leadership. Like that's brand new, you know. But like you can make a huge difference in your town or city. Whereas on the statewide level, you can make a little difference, and national level, maybe not make a difference, depending on what state you live in. But like, I really think it's important for people to get involved in like their local municipal politics. I really think that's important. You can make a huge impact in the lives of vulnerable neighbors by choosing carefully who your representation is on a city council or on a school board.
100%. So let's see. So how do you feel about how Mayor Holt and the city council has handled the pandemic?
I don't think they've done much. Full disclosure, I'm married to one member of the city council, Jo Beth Hammond, city councilor for Ward 6 of Oklahoma City. And I know her. I know everybody who's on the council, but I know everybody. We have a split up city council. Like, we have one straight anti-masker on the city council. We have an old guy who believes that masks are good, but that you can't get compliance with a mandate. We've got a middle-aged dude who doesn't believe in the mandate, but believes in going along with the status quo. Like, it's weird. And then we have, 3 young counselors who are on board with, we should have a statewide mandate. But all we've gotten in Oklahoma City is a mask mandate. We haven't done enough to curb the spread by limiting indoor dining, church services, the things that these super spreader events that are every week, you wear your mask into the restaurant and then you take it off and sit in a room full of people without masks. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But finding the way to balance like safety with commerce, which is frankly a big part of what the city council's job is keeping local economy in mind. I'd be bad at that job. But a couple of the conservative council people have been on board, and I'd say even the mayor has been on board with the mask mandate. I think that the mayor hasn't done much of anything to really address this head on. And I'd say the same for the council at large, like that they haven't done much to meet this head on. Like the fact that we've had to renew our mask mandate every 60 days.
Yeah.
Like that's stupid. Like, and it's a capitulation to right-wing voices. I mean, that's what we're seeing from the city. And I'd say for the mayor himself, like it's a difficult position, but not that difficult. He could be a little bit more brave. He's got political clout and he doesn't use that political clout like he really should, which is to like lean on the governor to make a statewide mask mandate. He hasn't bothered with that. And if he has reached out to the governor about that and the governor shut him out, he should say so.
Yeah.
But he hasn't. So I assume he hasn't done it. A lot of liberals in Oklahoma City really like the mayor, but I think that they don't realize that this mayor was a hyper conservative state senator who was in favor of legislation for like work requirements for SNAP benefits and drug testing for food stamps, and was in favor of a lot of these preemptions that we see where we can't ban guns in a park because the state law says that we can't do that. We can't ban fracking
or raise the minimum wage.
Or raise the minimum wage. A very good example. Like he was in favor of those. So I think a lot of my liberal counterparts in Oklahoma City are just willfully ignorant about that, about who our mayor really is.
Yeah.
Our mayor doesn't have a lot of power. He's essentially an at-large city councilor. He gets twice the pay of all the other city councilors. He's got a whole lot more photo opportunities, as you'll notice if you follow him on social media.
Yeah.
But doesn't have a ton of power, but he has clout, and he won't use his clout, and that bothers me.
Yeah.
I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, it does, and I agree. They've done probably better than most other smaller towns have done in Oklahoma, but they're bigger. They should do a little bit better. And
if our city can't flex its muscles, what's the point? Like same with Tulsa. Like the two biggest cities in Oklahoma ought to be able to have some influence on legislation. And the fact that they don't try it just points to complicity and complacency, I think.
Yeah. All right. So last question I have here is, what kind of music do you listen to?
Well, I listen to a lot of different kind of music. I listen to a lot of hip hop. I'm wearing a Meat Mill hat right now. I listen to a lot of rap. I listen to also some like really twee alternative, like I love Bell and Sebastian, you know. I'd say this year, I don't know what I think the best album of the year is, but I know that I've listened to Love and Best Wishes by LTZ. He's a local MC here in Oklahoma City. He had a new album this year, and I've listened to it a lot. It's really fun and insightful, and it talks a lot about issues of working class poverty, you know, and how that especially looks in the Black community in Oklahoma City, you know, about getting drug tested first, you know, and stuff like that. Like, he's got some really good insight with a lot of humor on that album. So I'd highly recommend Love and Best Wishes by LTZ. But yeah, I mean, my record collection is pretty eclectic, I would say. I listen to, like, I love Johnny Cash, you know. I think Frank Sinatra is probably a real asshole in real life, but I really like listening to him sing, you know. But I also really love Animal Collective, and I'm just like looking over my records. Like, lately I've gotten into, there's a record label from Toronto called Paper Bag Records, and a lot of their label talent do kind of electronica infused folk, like, it's hard to explain, but like Canadian electronica music is what I've been listening to a lot this year too. If that's not too like subgenre of a subgenre, but I don't listen to Limp Bizkit. I don't listen to Korn. I did listen to a cover, the old guy doing a cover of Snuff by Slipknot. And it was really lovely. Like, it sounded like a Leonard Cohen song, the way this guy did it. So I'm curious about Slipknot. Not enough that I'm going to be like, here, send me tracks by Slipknot, Greg. But I don't listen to much metal at all. I think Mastodon was the last heavy band that I was really into, and I was pretty into them. Got to see them a couple of times.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Right on.
Where all can we find you on social media?
Well, I am at Marty Peercy. That's MartyPeercy, at Marty Peercy on Twitter and Instagram. I don't really use Instagram that much, and I don't use Facebook except for to stir the pot or to promote an article that I wrote. But so I'm at Marty Peercy on Twitter is the best place to find me. Like I said before, at OKC_Span, if you were wanting to be able to follow along with Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County politics. And otherwise, I think that's pretty much the best places to find me. I don't really like I said, I don't use Instagram all that much. But yeah, man, I think I'm fun on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm irreverent, at least.